I'm Ryan. I'm 32, a software engineer by trade, and for most of my adult life, the unofficial financial backbone of my family. Not that I signed up for that role. It sort of just happened. At first, I thought I was being generous, helping out here and there. A rent payment for mom and dad when dad's hours were cut. A used car for my younger brother Adam when he got his first job and couldn't survive on the bus. Then came the small things that added up over time, covering their phone bills, Netflix, groceries, vet appointments, and suddenly, I was less a son or brother and more of an invisible wallet with legs. I never really said anything. I kept my mouth shut because I thought, it's family. That's what you do. You give. You support. You show up. But over the years, that sentiment twisted. It stopped being thank you and turned into you owe us. Every kind gesture became expected, and anything less than complete compliance was treated like betrayal. I learned that the hard way last Christmas. It started like most of our family holidays. Fake cheer, chaotic gift wrap flying, a tree half lit because no one remembered to replace the dead bulbs. I arrived late, as usual, juggling bags of gifts I carefully selected, mostly practical, moderately priced things. I'd stopped the lavish spending a year ago after I caught Adam reselling the smartwatch I bought him for $500. No thank you. Just a Facebook Marketplace post the day after Christmas. That's when something in me started to shift. This year, I bought him a decent wristwatch. Nothing fancy. Mid-range, stylish, and durable. Something a 26-year-old should appreciate. I wrapped it neatly, added a little card, and placed it under the tree. When he opened it, the look on his face said it all. That's it. A watch, he said, snorting, holding it up like it was some dollar store knockoff. My mom didn't miss her cue. She rolled her eyes with dramatic flair and sighed. He used to give real gifts. Before he got cheap. I didn't react immediately. I just sat there, holding my coffee, letting the silence crawl over everyone for a moment. The laughter from the other room dulled as her words echoed inside me like a slow drip wearing down stone. I smiled tight, polite. You're right, I said quietly. I used to. Adam chuckled like he'd scored some unspoken point. My mom smirked and turned her attention back to her mimosa. My dad didn't say anything. He never did when stuff like this happened. The rest of the evening blurred together. Cheap wine. Reheated ham. My aunt complaining about someone parking in front of her mailbox. But beneath my skin, something was burning slowly, building. Every ignored message I'd ever sent in the family group chat. Every Ryan will cover it, they assumed without asking. Every moment I swallowed resentment because I thought speaking up made me a bad son. That night, when I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even drink. I just opened my laptop. Over the years, I'd kept receipts. Literal ones. And digital paper trails. Direct debits, shared accounts, monthly transfers, auto payments I'd set up in their names. And more importantly, I documented the dozens of times I asked them to ease up, to show a little gratitude. All ignored. I typed up something that night. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. A realization that I'd been enabling their entitlement for far too long. I emailed my lawyer. Yeah, I had one. Mostly for boring contracts and tax things. But I'd mentioned my situation before, and he'd given me advice. Keep everything. You might need it one day. That day had come. I began freezing each auto debit. The mortgage payment I'd been covering for my mom in secret since dad's second heart attack? Canceled. The Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime tied to my card? Gone. My brother's lease, which I stupidly co-signed. I flagged it. Let them deal with the consequences. Then I set up something a little extra. A formal notification, something that wouldn't just sting, but shake them into understanding. A legal notice of financial disengagement. My lawyer helped draft it. Dry, factual, emotionless. It outlined every contribution, every account, every payment I had made on their behalf over the last 8 years. Then it stated, simply, that effective immediately, all financial support was terminated. I printed it, folded it, sealed it in an envelope. The next morning, I stopped by their house. No dramatic confrontation. No yelling in the driveway. I walked in like I always did. Mom forgot to reset the code on the garage keypad, as usual. They weren't home. The tree still blinked lazily, and the remnants of the holiday dinner were crusted onto paper plates stacked in the sink. I taped the envelope right on the fridge next to Mom's handwritten Christmas wish list, where she'd circled a new iPad and color-coded items with highlighters. I stared at it for a moment, that ridiculous list. She'd written need next to a pair of $300 headphones. Deserve next to spa vouchers. And beside the iPad, Ryan will handle this. I left without saying a word. The fallout, though? That came fast. By noon, my phone was already buzzing. First, a text from my mom. MOM texted, "What is this letter on the fridge? Is this some kind of joke?" Then my brother, Adam, texted, "Dude, are you having a breakdown or something?" No, Merry Christmas. No, thank you for the years of support. Just confusion and irritation, like I'd broken some silent contract none of us had ever signed, but all of them believed in. Then the call started. I didn't answer. Not because I was trying to be cruel, but because I knew exactly how it would go. There would be no sincere apology, no ownership. Just denial, gaslighting, maybe some crocodile tears if I let the call go on long enough. Instead, I made coffee, sat down at my desk, and started making lists of the recurring payments I'd canceled, the accounts I had closed, and the services I'd unsubscribed from. It was a weirdly peaceful kind of administration, like I was filing away years of neglect, one click at a time. That afternoon, I got a final group text from my mom. MOM texted, "We need to talk. This is beyond immature. You can't just abandon your family because of one comment. We've always counted on you. Don't be selfish." That was the first time she used the word selfish on me. I stared at it for a long while. Then I scrolled up, rereading old messages. The group chat was a graveyard of ignored questions and logistics. "Can anyone help me move this weekend? I'm covering groceries again this month. Any chance someone else can pitch in?" Silence every time. My aunt popped in next, clearly recruited. "Ryan, sweetheart, I know you're upset, but you know how your mom gets. Don't punish the whole family for her slip-up." That slip-up had been a constant echo my whole life. Slip-ups like laughing when Adam made jokes about me being the backup kid. Like forgetting my birthday dinner 2 years in a row, but throwing a party when my brother passed one online course. Like borrowing thousands just until payday that never returned. But they were right about one thing. This was different. I wasn't just going to withdraw quietly this time. I was finally choosing peace over obligation. And peace didn't mean burning bridges. It meant building a new home somewhere else, one they didn't have the keys to. That evening, Adam showed up at my apartment. He must have driven straight over after the text storm failed. I knew he was outside before he even knocked. His car was double parked like always, music thumping as if he was trying to shake the building loose. I didn't answer the door. Just watched from the peephole as he banged twice, then 3 times, muttering under his breath, "Come on, man. Don't be dramatic. Let's talk like adults." Talk like adults? From the same guy who once, jokingly, called me a cash machine at Thanksgiving and poured gravy on my shoes when I didn't laugh? I let him stew out there for about 10 minutes before he finally gave up. He muttered something about acting like a diva and stomped off, slamming his car door so hard my downstairs neighbor texted me a passive-aggressive, "Everything okay up there?" The next day, the real unraveling began. My mom's power got cut off, temporarily, at least. I'd been auto-paying the utility bills. Apparently, she never even saw them. When she called the company, they told her the card had been declined. No backup on file. Adam's lease company called him. Without me co-signing, he didn't meet the income requirements alone. The agent asked for a new guarantor or a buyout. Adam freaked out. Posted some vague nonsense on social media about people turning their backs on family. The comments started rolling in. "What happened, bro? Family is everything, man. Hope y'all figure it out." And my favorite, "Your brother was always too good to y'all." That one came from my cousin on my dad's side, who clearly saw more than she ever let on. By the end of the week, Mom called me at least 13 times. Then came the email. Formal, stiffly worded, and clearly typed by someone else. My guess? A friend from church or one of her book club ladies. It said something like, "Ryan, your actions have caused significant disruption in the family. While we understand you may be feeling underappreciated, this isn't the way to handle things. We are requesting a family meeting to resolve this amicably and restore unity." Restore unity. They had no idea what real unity even looked like. But I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer, just in case they tried anything dramatic. Not because I thought they'd sue me, but because I knew the kind of guilt bombs they were capable of. If they couldn't shame me with sentiment, they'd try legality next. Then, just when things started to go quiet, no texts, no voicemails, no knocks, my dad called. That's when everything shifted. It was late, almost midnight, when Dad called. I was surprised he even tried. He usually avoided conflict like it was toxic waste, and in our family, that meant staying silent while Mom spoke for both of them. But there he was, Dad, mobile, blinking on my screen, hesitating at the edge of going to voicemail. I didn't answer immediately. I watched the screen, waiting, listening to the soft hum of my fridge and the tick of my wall clock. 10 seconds passed. 15. Then I picked up. "Ryan," he said, voice low. "You home?" I leaned back in my chair, staring at the dark ceiling. "Yeah, good." He paused. I could hear a slight rattle in his breath. Maybe nerves. Maybe the coffee he'd never had checked out. I didn't want to call. Your mom said not to. Said you needed space. But I just wanted to talk. There was a long silence. I didn't interrupt it. "I read the letter," he finally said. "The one you left on the fridge." My stomach tightened slightly. I didn't know if he'd seen it until now. He wasn't exactly the fridge-checking type. The man barely remembered where the coffee filters were. "Yeah," I said simply. "I didn't know," he murmured. "I mean, I I guess I knew bits. That you were helping. But not like that. Not everything." I kept my voice even. "I emailed both of you about it. A few times." "I know," he admitted. "I should have paid attention. I just—" He let out a weak chuckle. "Your mom handles all that stuff. Always has." There it was. That same old line. Your mom handles it. Your mom deals with it. Your mom decides. It was the perfect deflection. Clean, guiltless, gutless. "You're a grown man," I replied, quieter than I intended. "You let her turn me into an ATM." He didn't deny it. Didn't get defensive either. Just breathed out and said, "Yeah." I was quiet again. "You were good to us, he said. "Too good. I should have stepped in years ago. Should have said something when she got carried away." I sat forward slightly. "When she told people I paid off your second mortgage because I owed you for raising me?" He flinched audibly. "That wasn't fair." "Or when Adam said I only went into tech because I wasn't smart enough for med school like him." And she laughed. He didn't respond. I kept going. "Or when you both told me not to bring my ex to Christmas because it wasn't serious, only to find out she'd already been replaced with Adam's new girlfriend at dinner?" He sighed heavily. "She said you'd overreact." "Of course she did. I'm not calling to fight," he said finally. I guess I wanted to say thank you. And that I get it now." I didn't know what to do with that. It felt too late and too early at the same time. Like pouring water on a fire that had already turned to ash. "She wants to meet," he added. "Not to yell. She said she'll apologize." I raised an eyebrow to no one. Did she use that word? Apologize. Well, not exactly. But she said she's willing to have a grown-up conversation. That's something, right? It was something. Just not the thing I needed. "I'll think about it," I said, and I meant it. But I also knew I wasn't ready to sit across from her while she did mental gymnastics to justify years of passive cruelty. He exhaled, and for the first time in the call, his voice softened into something more familiar. "Ryan, I'm sorry I wasn't there more." There was a beat, a hesitation, and then I should have said something sooner. And just like that, the call ended. Not dramatically, not with yelling or ultimatums. Just a quiet click and the ghost of a father trying to climb out from behind his wife's shadow. The next few days were calm. Too calm. No texts. No Facebook subtweets. No cousin accidentally leaking updates. For the first time in years, the silence felt deliberate. Like the whole family had regrouped, circled the wagons, and now they were planning. And then came the envelope. Plain. No return address. Slipped under my door like a flyer from a pizza place. Inside? A folded sheet of printer paper. One sentence. "If you really think we've wronged you, let's sit down and make it right as a family." Below that, in unfamiliar handwriting. "Christmas dinner. 6 p.m. Please come." They'd set the table again. But this time, they weren't serving ham and forgiveness. They wanted something. And I had a choice to make. I stared at the letter for a long time. It was written in my mother's handwriting, though I could tell she tried to make it look more neutral, less sharp and scolding, more like some friendly invitation. But I knew her too well. I knew that every loop and curve of her letters carried years of judgment and passive aggression, whether she realized it or not. And beneath the surface of "let's make it right" was something much more familiar: control. I set the letter on the counter and walked into the kitchen. Poured myself a glass of water and sat down at the table I'd bought myself when I moved into this apartment, a solid oak one, with enough scratches to show it was mine and not just something passed down with strings attached. The silence felt heavy that evening, but it was a different kind of heavy. Not the tense, bracing for impact silence I used to feel when heading into one of Mom's talks. This one was mine. Chosen. I didn't go to Christmas dinner. I didn't even text back. Instead, I went to a Korean barbecue place downtown with a few coworkers who also had complicated families. We laughed too loudly, ordered too much meat, and toasted with cheap sake. When they asked where my family was, I just smiled and said, taking a break from tradition. No one pried. No one judged. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the aching guilt of not showing up for people who never showed up for me. The next morning, my voicemail was full. Mom had left 5 messages, each more desperate than the last. Message 1 was calm. Hi, honey. Just wondering if you're on your way. We're all waiting. Message 2 had some edge. Everyone's here. Ryan, don't ruin this. Message 3 dropped the facade entirely. Unbelievable. You really are going to abandon your family over one little joke? Message 4 was quieter. You should have been here. Your father tried to cover for you. It didn't go well. Message 5 was sobbing. I didn't reply. Not right away. I needed space. I needed to make sure I wasn't going to be pulled back in by habit or sympathy or that deep, childlike urge to fix everything just so the grown-ups would stop yelling. A few days passed. Then a week. Then I got a message from Adam. No opener. No small talk. Adam, she's planning to contest the car title transfer. Says you gifted it. Ah, there it was. I'd forgotten the car. Well, not forgotten. Just assumed she'd let it go. Years ago, I bought her a new sedan when the old minivan finally died in a parking lot outside Costco. I paid in full, but I left the title in her name to make insurance easier. She never thanked me, but she loved that car. Called it her freedom ride. When I drew my financial line in the sand, I'd started the process of reclaiming anything that was still legally mine, or should have been. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about ending the story clean, about making sure there was no confusion in the future. No, but you owe us, because of some lingering gift she could weaponize later. My lawyer had warned me this might happen. She'll say it was a gift, and she's not technically wrong. But unless she can prove it was intended to be permanent, and unless it's been enough years to count as abandonment, you're within your rights to take it back. I texted Adam back. Me. Letter. I've already filed the notice of ownership claim. He replied an hour later. Adam, she says she's cutting you out of her will. I laughed. Out loud. In the middle of my apartment, alone, I laughed. As if there was ever going to be a will with anything in it. As if I hadn't been footing the bills while she stockpiled candles, throw pillows, and essential oils she never used. I didn't reply. Instead, I booked a weekend trip. Something small, just a cabin up north, a few hours away. I brought books. I left my phone on airplane mode. And I let the days unfold with no expectations, no deadlines, no sarcastic comments about how I always run away when things get tough. When I came back, something had changed. Dad had sent me a letter. A real one. Not an email. Not a voicemail. A letter. It was short. Ryan, I don't know how to fix what we broke, but I want you to know I see it now. I see all of it. You didn't leave us. We pushed you out. I'm sorry for the years I spent sitting beside her instead of standing up for you. I was scared of rocking the boat, but you were the one holding it together while the rest of us took turns drilling holes. If you never come back, I'll understand. But I'll be waiting. Dad. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it and put it in my drawer. I didn't call him. Not yet. Because forgiveness doesn't come on a schedule. And accountability isn't a one-time performance. It's a process. A decision repeated, over and over, even when no one is watching. Over the next few months, the silence became normal. Not painful, not dramatic, just clean. I started sleeping better, eating better. I met someone. Her name's Leah. She's a photographer. We bonded over a shared hatred of passive-aggressive texts and a love of spicy food. When I told her about my family, she didn't flinch. Just nodded and said, "Sounds like you finally chose yourself." Yeah, I did. Spring came, and with it, a package in the mail. No name on the return address, but I knew who it was from before I opened it. Inside, the watch I'd given Adam. Still in the box. Still unworn. No note. No explanation. Just the unspoken message, "We don't want your version of love." I smiled and placed it on my shelf. A reminder that I wasn't the problem. They just never knew what love looked like when it wasn't wrapped in $signs. Now, I'm okay. I've built something that feels like home. Real friends. A real relationship. Real boundaries. And this time, nobody's rolling their eyes when I hand them a gift. Because the people around me? They don't need me to prove my worth with money. They already see it. My name's Jordan, I'm 43, and I've always been the kind of person who lets things slide for the sake of peace, for the sake of family. But there's a difference between keeping the peace and letting people walk all over you. That line? My brother Dean erased it a long time ago, and this time he crossed it in a way I'll never forget. Dean and I grew up close. He was the golden boy, varsity everything, charming, the one who never got in trouble even when we both broke the rules. I was the quieter one, the bookworm, as my dad used to say with a half smirk that always felt like a warning not to get too proud. That dynamic followed us into adulthood. Dean stayed the center of attention, throwing elaborate family barbecues, posting Facebook photos with perfect captions like #FamilyFirst, while I built a quiet life with my son, Theo. We were never flashy. I worked in IT, Theo read books the way other kids scrolled TikTok, and we didn't chase approval. But even so, I always tried to show up for family events to be supportive, even when it was awkward, even when it hurt. Theo is 17 now. He's always been different, not in a he'll grow out of it kind of way, but in the rare, once-in-a-generation way. He's quiet, observant, and thoughtful. He listens more than he speaks. When he was 8, he read *Sapiens* cover to cover because someone left it in a waiting room. He skipped a grade in middle school, started dual enrollment classes before he could drive, and yet he never rubbed it in. He wasn't cocky. He was just passionate, especially about philosophy and theoretical physics. But Dean never saw that. In Dean's eyes, Theo was just soft, the kind of kid who'd struggle in the real world. And no matter how many medals Theo quietly earned, Dean always managed to downplay them. That's great, he'd say, but the world doesn't hand out trophies for trivia. The graduation party was for Dean's daughter, Kayla. She's a lovely kid, cheer captain, accepted into a decent state school, and clearly adored by the whole family. And look, I was genuinely proud of her. I know how hard it is to be a teenager these days. So when Dean invited us to her party, I didn't hesitate. Theo was reluctant, said he'd rather stay home and study for finals, but I nudged him to come. It's important, I told him. We show up for family, even when it's not easy. The party was everything you'd expect: balloons, banners, custom cupcakes with Kayla's face printed on them. Dean rented out this over-the-top hall, catered by some local trendy taco place. Everyone was dressed like it was an awards show. We arrived a little late, and Dean barely greeted us. "Glad you made it," he said, patting Theo on the back like he was doing him a favor. I could tell early on something was off. There were these weird glances, whispered conversations when Theo and I walked by. My sister-in-law, Tanya, looked at us and gave this tight-lipped smile that said, "You don't belong here." I chalked it up to nerves. Maybe they were just overwhelmed hosting. Then, halfway through the party, Dean stood up and clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. All right, he said, grinning. "Before we get back to dancing and stuffing our faces, I want to do something special." He turned to a big table behind him. On it were wrapped gifts, elegantly boxed, neatly labeled. "I've got something for the future leaders in this room," he said. "The ones who are gonna make waves. You know who you are." He started calling out names. One by one, kids stepped up: Kayla's best friend, their quarterback cousin, a neighbor who got an internship at a fashion magazine. Each one got a tailored gift: a journal with their initials embossed in gold, a leather-bound planner. One kid got a smartwatch. I watched Theo out of the corner of my eye. He sat quietly, expression unreadable. I told myself Dean probably hadn't prepared anything for him, and that was fine. We didn't come for presents. Then Dean said, last but not least, "Theo." People turned. I felt a flicker of surprise. Dean waved Theo forward. "Come on up, buddy." Theo hesitated, then stood. He walked to the front, all eyes on him, hands awkwardly shoved in his pockets. Dean grinned and handed him a thin, crumpled package. It wasn't wrapped, just loosely folded in old tissue paper. Everyone went silent. Theo slowly unwrapped it. Inside was a torn composition notebook, half-used, with doodles and scribbles on the first few pages. On top was a yellow sticky note. It read, "Some kids just peak in high school." There was a beat of stunned silence. And then, laughter. It started with Dean's son, then Tanya. Then it spread. Like some awful in-joke I wasn't letting on. Even a few distant relatives chuckled. "It's just a joke," someone muttered. "Lighten up." Theo stood there, frozen. He didn't flinch. He didn't cry. He just nodded slowly, turned, and walked back to me. I didn't say a word. I just stood, took his hand, and we left. Right in the middle of the party. No goodbyes. Theo was quiet in the car. I kept checking on him, but he just stared out the window. Finally, he said, "I'm not mad." Dad. I just didn't expect it to sting that much. I could have screamed, but I didn't. I had to stay calm for him, because Dean wanted a reaction. He wanted Theo to look weak, but Theo didn't give him that, and neither would I. That night, Theo went back to his room and opened his laptop. He didn't sulk. He didn't rant. He got to work, tweaking his final application essays, triple-checking deadlines. When I brought him dinner, he looked up and smiled. I'll be okay. Just wait. 3 days later, the letter arrived. I wasn't expecting it yet, but there it was, thick, with the crimson Harvard crest stamped on the front. Theo opened it in the kitchen. I watched his eyes scan the words. His lips parted, and then he laughed. Just once. Soft, relieved. I got in, he whispered. And I just sat down and cried. The moment Theo said, I got in, something clicked in me. It wasn't just pride. It was this slow burning fire that had been building for years, through every backhanded compliment, every time Dean rolled his eyes at my nerd son, every little jab disguised as a joke. I had taken the hits quietly, like I always did. But this time, Dean humiliated my son in front of a crowd. This time, he made sure we both felt small. That notebook? That note? That wasn't just a cruel prank. It was a message. One that said, your kid doesn't belong. Not with us. Not in the future. Not anywhere. But Dean had miscalculated one thing. He thought Theo peaking in high school was the punchline. He didn't realize that for kids like Theo, high school was just the warm-up. I made copies of the letter. Not scans, physical color copies of the actual acceptance package. I slipped each one into a high-quality envelope, addressed to each household that had been at the party. I didn't add a note. No snide comments. No, bet you feel stupid now. Just the letter, folded neatly, like an official announcement. It was the most polite middle finger I've ever given. But that wasn't all. You see, Dean had hired a professional photographer for the party. She'd posted a huge gallery of the event online, complete with shots of every gift moment. I found the one of Theo standing there with that torn notebook, surrounded by smirking faces. I screenshotted it. Then I printed it and framed it. On the back, I taped the Harvard letter. That copy? I delivered personally. Dean wasn't home when I stopped by. Tanya answered, surprised to see me. She looked me up and down like I just crawled out of a drain. I smiled, handed her the frame, and said, this is for Dean. No need to text me. He'll understand. And then I left. That night, my phone blew up. Not from Dean. No, he went silent, hasn't texted, called, or even liked a post since. But the others? The ones who laughed? Suddenly, they had a lot to say. Messages poured in. Hey, didn't realize Theo was Harvard-bound. That's amazing. Wow, we were just joking. Hope there's no hard feelings. I always knew he was brilliant. You must be so proud. Funny how quickly people switch sides when success becomes undeniable. My mom called too. She's always tried to stay neutral between Dean and me. Maybe you should just let it go, she said. Dean didn't mean it that way. It was just supposed to be lighthearted. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked if it had been Kayla and someone had given her that note. Would you still say it was lighthearted? She paused, then sighed. Point taken. And that's the thing. It was never about the party, or even the notebook. It was about respect, about dignity, about how people like Dean try to define success in narrow terms: loud, showy, popular. He couldn't understand that brilliance doesn't always walk into a room with a booming voice and a trophy. Sometimes it walks in quietly, listens, and builds something the rest of us can't even imagine. Over the next few weeks, the silence from Dean stretched. At first, I thought he was sulking. But then I heard through the grapevine that he was embarrassed, mortified, actually. Apparently, some of his friends were at the party, and a few of their kids didn't even get into college. And here comes Theo, the quiet kid, heading to Harvard. Dean had been bragging for years about being the successful brother, and now he looked like a fool. One of my cousins texted me, you know Dean's been telling people you used a favor to get Theo in? That actually made me laugh. I told Theo, and he just shook his head. That's what people do when they can't understand something. They rewrite it until it makes sense to them. Meanwhile, Theo kept working. He didn't let any of it distract him. He applied for scholarships, joined a summer research program, and started brushing up on quantum mechanics for fun. But every now and then, I'd catch him looking at that framed photo, him standing with that notebook. Not with bitterness, but with a kind of focused resolve, like it reminded him what he was working away from. Then, one night, I got a call. It was Kayla. She sounded hesitant. Hey, Uncle Jordan, Can I talk to you for a second? I stepped outside. Of course. Everything okay? She took a breath. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. About the party. I didn't know my dad planned that. I didn't even know he had gifts for everyone. I would have said something, but I was scared. I stayed quiet. Let her talk. And also, she added, I got my housing assignment. I'm going to be 2 blocks from Theo's dorm. That hit me. The kids were moving on. The adults? Maybe not so much. A few days later, Dean finally reached out. A short text. Just, we should talk. I stared at it for a long time, because by then, something had shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of playing a part in a family that mistook cruelty for humor and silence for agreement. Tired of making space for people who never made any for us. So I didn't reply. Not yet. I had something else planned first. Something quiet, but unforgettable. I didn't respond to Dean's message right away, not because I wanted to ghost him, but because I wanted the right moment. For once, I wasn't going to let him dictate the timing, the tone, or the terms. And I definitely wasn't going to sit down over coffee like nothing had happened. The truth is, I'd spent years shrinking myself to fit into a version of family that had no room for who I really was. And I wasn't going to let my son repeat that cycle. Not after everything. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. 2 weeks after the text, our aunt, my dad's sister, was throwing a family brunch. She was turning 70 and wanted to celebrate it old school, which meant everyone was expected to show up, sit through a long speech, and pose for dozens of group photos and matching outfits. Dean and his crew would be there, of course. And under normal circumstances, I might have found a reason to skip it. But I went. Theo didn't want to come. You sure it's not going to be a circus again? He asked. It probably will be, I admitted. But it's not about them. It's about what we do with the spotlight when they give it to us. He nodded slowly. Then I'll bring the letter. I raised an eyebrow. You sure? He smiled. Absolutely. The brunch was exactly what I expected, catered, stuffy, full of fake hugs and louder than necessary greetings. Tanya air-kissed me like we were on a reality show. Dean stood at the other end of the room, pretending to be deep in conversation with one of our cousins, but I could feel his eyes on us the entire time. Then came the speeches. Our aunt went on about legacy and family pride, and I mostly tuned out until Dean stepped forward. Of course he did. He took the mic and launched into a rambling story about how family isn't just blood, it's about values, and how raising strong kids is the greatest accomplishment of all. Every word felt like a performance. Every sentence was a thinly veiled pat on his own back. He talked about Kayla's scholarships, about how he taught her to block out the noise and focus on achievement, and ended by saying, and I just hope we all support each other's kids as they build their futures, no matter what path they take. He smiled right at me when he said it. Like that erased everything. I stood up. Theo looked at me, unsure. It's time, I whispered. I walked toward the front, calm and steady. Can I say a few words too? I asked our aunt. She nodded and handed me the mic, clearly surprised. Dean stepped back, arms crossed. I didn't launch into a long speech. I kept it simple. I want to talk about something that happened a few weeks ago. At a party, the room got quiet. I watched my son get handed a used notebook and a message that said he peaked in high school. A room full of adults laughed, and we left without making a scene, because I believed in what I still believe now: true accomplishment doesn't need applause. It just needs time. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a copy of the letter. The real one. Theo had laminated it. This, I said, holding it up, is Theo's Harvard acceptance letter. Not a favor, not a legacy slot. Just years of work, discipline, and quiet perseverance. I turned and handed the letter to our aunt. You always said you wanted to brag about your nieces and nephews at church. Thought you might like to start with this. Then I looked at Dean. He wasn't smirking anymore. Sometimes, I added, you don't realize who's watching when you laugh. But kids remember, and so do their parents. I walked back to our table. Theo looked stunned, then proud. He reached over and fist bumped me under the table, like we'd just pulled off the greatest heist of all time. The silence lingered long after. No one clapped. No one made a joke. Not even Dean. After the event, people approached us quietly. A few apologized. Some tried to save face. One even said, "You really got him back, huh?" But that wasn't the point. It was never about revenge. It was about respect. About making it impossible to ignore what people try so hard to dismiss. Dean didn't speak to us at the brunch. But later that night, I got a second text from him. Just one word. Why? I didn't reply. Instead, I posted something on Facebook. Not a rant, not a clapback. Just a photo of Theo holding his letter, smiling. No caption. Within an hour, it had more likes than Dean's last 6 posts combined. And that photo? The one from the party with the torn notebook? I mailed it to Dean. In a new frame. This time, I added something. A sticky note. Some kids don't peak. They rise. Let him sit with that. Because this time, I wasn't shrinking. And neither was my son. The months that followed felt different. Not just because Theo was preparing to leave for college, but because for the first time in years, our lives weren't orbiting around the family's approval anymore. We stopped attending events where we weren't wanted, stopped chasing validation from people who couldn't see past their own reflections. Our world got smaller, yes, but it got clearer too. And in that clarity, something beautiful happened. Theo blossomed. He didn't change to prove anyone wrong. He didn't need to. He stayed the same thoughtful, soft-spoken, fiercely intelligent young man he'd always been. But now, the world finally started seeing him the way I always had. His high school held a last-minute awards ceremony that spring. Apparently, once the administration learned about his Harvard acceptance and his recent published research with a university lab, they scrambled to honor him. They asked if he wanted to give a speech. He almost said no, but I nudged him. And when he finally took the stage, standing tall in front of classmates who once dismissed him, he opened with this. I used to think being quiet meant being invisible. Now I know it just means people need to listen harder. The room was silent. And for the first time, they did listen. Then came move-in day. The drive to Cambridge was long but peaceful. Theo packed light, just books, clothes, and a little wooden box with his favorite quotes. When we reached his dorm, he looked around, took a deep breath, and smiled. I think I'm going to like it here, he said. I hugged him, tighter than I probably should have. I already do, I whispered. I stayed one extra day, just in case he needed anything. He didn't. He already had plans, study groups, orientation dinners, even a campus chess club he was excited to join. He walked me to my rental car the next morning, and just before I left, he reached into his backpack and pulled out the notebook. The notebook. The one from the party. The torn one with the cruel message inside. I've been using it, he said, for ideas. I blinked. You kept it. He nodded. I like seeing where it started. I drove off that morning with tears in my eyes, not from sadness, but from something deeper. Pride. Gratitude. Relief. My son had taken something that was meant to humiliate him and turned it into his own personal monument. And Dean? He never reached out again. He unfollowed me on social media. Sent a half-hearted congratulations card through our mother that I never responded to. Word around the family was he felt ambushed and humiliated by the brunch. Some even suggested I should apologize for making a scene. But I didn't. Because what Dean really hated wasn't the scene, it was the mirror. A few more holidays came and went. We skipped most of them. The family dynamics shifted slightly, as they tend to do. Some relatives quietly sided with us. Others doubled down on pretending nothing happened. But none of it mattered anymore. We were out of their emotional quicksand. And then, nearly a year later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo frame. It held a new image, one I hadn't seen before. It was from Kayla's graduation party, but not the one of Theo with the notebook. This one showed Theo walking away from the crowd, head high, shoulders straight, while everyone else laughed behind him. He looked untouched, like he didn't belong to their world, and thank God for that. Behind the photo was a sticky note. Not typed, handwritten. I was wrong. He didn't peek. He launched. No signature. But I knew the handwriting. It was Dean's. I didn't tell Theo. I didn't post it online. I didn't frame it or reply. Because some things don't need an audience. Instead, I slipped the note into Theo's wooden quote box during winter break. He didn't notice right away. But one day, when he was packing to head back for spring semester, he opened the box and froze. He didn't say anything. Just looked at me, eyes glassy, and nodded. That was enough. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was simple. We lived better. We rose above. And we stopped asking for seats at tables that were never built for us in the first place. Theo graduated summa cum laude 4 years later. Dean wasn't invited. And when Theo took the stage to accept his honors medal, he wore a small pin on his lapel, barely noticeable, unless you looked close. It was a paper notebook, gold-plated, torn at the corner. After the ceremony, someone asked him about it. "Oh, that," he said with a small grin. Just a reminder. Where you start doesn't define where you go. And that's the truth. Some kids don't peak. They ascend.